Okay, let's look at some other tools that will be useful when you get to the point of developing animations, games, etc. Suppose we just want to have the cat go back and forth, back and forth. Well, in order to do that, and let's say we want this to happen without us having to tell it to do that all the time. So what we want to do is we want to have the cat move in a forever loop. So we create a forever loop, and then we'd say move 10 steps. Now when we click this, the cat will just move forever, or at least in this case until it hits the edge. So now what we have to do is figure out how can we tell it to, when it gets to the edge, bounce off and go back the other way. Fortunately, under motion, Scratch has something that does exactly that. It's called if on edge, bounce. So now when we click, right here in fact, the cat now bounces and just keeps going back and forth. Now if your cat is flipping upside down, it's because you can actually control the way that it bounces. So down, if you click on this little eye here, you get a larger screen for the sprite. Rotation style, we can change to this middle one, which just means the cat will rotate on its vertical axis rather than flipping on its horizontal axis and rotating on its vertical axis. Okay, so now we have the cat doing what we want it to do, which is to say moving back and forth forever. And so it will keep doing this until we tell it explicitly to stop. The other thing we want to do is we want this cat to look like it's walking. And it turns out that for the cat sprite, there are two different uniforms, and if we click back and forth between them, it actually creates a walking-like motion. To do that in the script, we go to Looks, and we go to Next Costume. And what we do is we put that inside the forever loop. So now every time it moves 10 steps, it's going to switch costumes. When it's at costume 1, it'll move up to costume 2. But since there are only two costumes, when it gets to costume 2, it'll go back to costume 1. So now when we click, we can see that it looks like the cat is running. Okay. Next thing we want to do is we actually want this cat to do this down here so it looks more like it's running on the ground. And so what we can see is that this position right here, if we go to motion, we can see that, and we go to XY, this gets constantly updated as long as we haven't dragged it over here. Once we drag it over here, it stays put. So we can take this and move it to the top of the forever loop so that now when we initiate, it's always going to go back to that same initial spot. It's going to go back and forth, and now it's bouncing, and it's just going to keep doing this forever. Okay, well, suppose we want something else to happen. Let's say we want another sprite in here. So let's click on Choose Sprite from Library. Let's choose an animal, and maybe we'll choose a bat. So we'll double click that. Now we have another sprite. And now let's say that we want the cat to move back and forth, but if it bumps into the bat, we want it to meow and we want the game to end. Okay. So inside here, now we're going to go back and we're going to say if, because we want to create a condition, and the condition is if the cat touches the bat, we want certain things to happen. So in sensing here, we have some options where we can say, as long as the cat is the active sprite, we can say touching. And we can see that when we look at the pulled drop-down menu, we have some options: mouse pointer, edge, and bat1. So we select bat1 and we drag this, which is a diamond-shaped block, and it can go inside this if condition. So now we can say if the cat is touching the bat, then we want certain things to happen. One, we want the cat to play the sound meow. And then we also want, under control, we want to stop all. So in other words, we don't want the game to continue, such as it is. We want the cat just to stop. Finally, let's say we want this whole thing to be initiated by clicking the flag here. Okay, so now the cat's moving back and forth Right now, the only way we can move the bat is we have to actually drag it like this. And you can see the cat stopped. Didn't really hear the sound of the meow. Scratch can be a little funny sometimes when it gets to having the sprites sense each other, but it did stop the action. Okay, so let's move the bat up. Let's click the flag. And again, the cat starts. Move this down here. Okay, cat stopped. Let's take a look at our sprite. And we have play sound meow. It's not clear to me anyway why it's not playing, but welcome Scratch. Okay, the next thing we would want to do then is we will want to have the bat controlled by, let's say, either the mouse or by the arrows. So we would click on bat, and we would say, again, we would use control. We would say forever. And we would want to have the cat responding to if, let's say, in this case, we would go to sensing, and we would say if, let's say, in this case, key down arrow is pressed, then we would move the bat. We would change the Y position of the bat by, let's say, -5. So that means it's going to move the bat down by 5 steps. And we'll have this also initiated by the flag. So when we click the flag, the actions for both sprites will be initiated. Okay, so the cat's moving. Now the bat's not doing anything, but now when we press the down arrow, the bat moves. Now the cat ran into the bat. Game over. We don't know why it didn't meow.